Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Take Your Shot podcast. On today's show, we discuss the Denver Nuggets slow start, plus react to devastating injuries to two superstars early on this season. That's all coming up and more on today's episode of the Take Your Shot podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Of course, as always, I'm your wonderful host, Joshua Gitman, and I hope everyone had a great holiday. Happy Halloween. But now we are almost 2 weeks into the NBA season. A lot has happened. There have been some surprises. There have been some disappointments. There have been some teams who we didn't expect to be this good. It didn't expect to be this bad early on. So we are going to react to all of it, and we are going to start with the Milwaukee Bucks, as the Bucks are really falling down and falling down fast. They start off the season 1-4 as they have lost 4 straight games. Their first win, of course, was against the Philadelphia 76ers in Philadelphia without Joel Embiid and Paul George. But ever since that, the Milwaukee Bucks have been a disaster. The Bucks, have lost every game by almost nearly double digits. They've lost to both Chicago and Brooklyn, teams that we thought that were probably not going to be good this year. They lost to the Memphis Grizzlies on the road by more than 20 points. And this has just been a disaster to Doc Rivers' first full year as the Milwaukee Bucks head coach. And the problem is, Doc Rivers did not have a great finish to last season. Lost in the first round, finished the regular season under 500 after the Milwaukee Bucks started great with head coach Adrian Griffin. Obviously, there was chemistry issues. The message from Adrian Griffin was not getting to the locker room. But Doc Rivers has gone in there and just has not done a good job. The offense looks dysfunctional. If you are a Milwaukee Bucks fan, I would 100% be concerned right now about the state of the organization. This Damian Lillard experience so far has been a failure for the Bucks. There is high expectations when you have two top 75 players of all time, and the Bucks have just not met those expectations. This is the first time that we're really getting to the point where, okay, something's going to have to happen very soon. Because, last season, of course, the firing happened. Doc Rivers comes in the middle of the season. It's tough to really coach a team and figure out the system when you don't even have your own staff on the bench. You're coming off a firing, and you just got brought in there in the middle of the season. But now Doc Rivers had a full training camp to figure this out. And we know Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers is a champion, but he's also blown some playoff leads. He has not had success in the postseason, and the Bucks did lose in the first round. Yes, they had a Giannis injury. Of course, Damian Lillard was out for a couple of the games in that series against Indiana as well. But this has been utter failure for Milwaukee. I think they're 19-24, if I'm not mistaken, since Doc Rivers has taken over. And when you have a team of Giannis and Damian Lillard, there is no way in hell that you should be going under 500 as a head coach. I'm sorry. No matter who else you put around them, those two players, once again, are top 75 players of all time. This is chaos for the Bucks. Seriously. Their loss last night to the Memphis Grizzlies, they lost by 23. They shot the ball poorly. 9 of 42 from the three-point line. It's not Giannis. Giannis is doing fine. Giannis is doing his thing. He's attacking the basket. He's drawing fouls. The problem is Damian Lillard hasn't been that great. The supporting cast hasn't been that great. And, of course, yes, Chris Middleton is starting the season off with an injury, which, of course, their third best player, a big part of it. But you should not be starting 1-4. You should not be losing to a worse Chicago Bulls team at home. A terrible, probably the second or worst team in the Eastern Conference, Brooklyn Nets, at all. Period. You're just flat out better than those teams. Why are the Bucks losing to those teams? It's just the continuity between Dame and Giannis. It just hasn't been there. And Dame had a terrible game against the Memphis Grizzlies the other night, only scoring 4 points, shot the ball 1 from 12, didn't hit a single three-pointer, was a minus 29 on the court. Giannis was a 0, Of course, they lost the game by 23, so not anyone's going to have a positive. But the fact that Giannis almost had a positive plus minus, despite the fact that they lost by 23, it's not Giannis's fault. It is the supporting cast and the coaching staff for not giving Giannis the team around him. And it's the front office as well. It's definitely a little bit of everyone. And now if I'm Giannis Antetokounmpo and I'm looking at the state of the Milwaukee Bucks, you won a championship in 2021, right? You had a couple of bad second round losses in 22 and 23. Then you go trade for Damian Lillard because the whole running it back just hasn't worked because teams like Boston, Miami were beating you. And it just has been an utter failure. So you look at the Bucks going all in with that and seeing how there's no progress. The team's only getting older. I mean, Giannis, he's already in 30. I mean, how much time does he really have left to compete for a title? And this Milwaukee Bucks team, from what I've seen in the first 5 games, I know it's only 5 games, so we can't overreact to just 5 games. They are not a championship contender. Just flat out. I mean, their team is just not that great. I thought Gary Trent Jr. would be a difference. He's been playing somewhat decent, but not really the level that the Bucks hoped they would get. I mean, Brook Lopez, he was a huge part in the Bucks championship team, but he's only getting older. So what do you expect out of Brook Lopez? I mean, Bobby Portis is doing what he's doing, but the rest of the bench is just unproven guys. I mean, DeLon Wright's not that great. AJ Green, Andre Jackson Jr., they haven't been doing anything great. Pat Connaughton has only gotten older, and he hasn't been playing great the past couple of seasons. The Bucks bench is not good. The overall roster is just not good. This is not a team, if I'm Giannis Antetokounmpo, I surround myself with and say that I am a championship contender with this team. So that raises the question. If the Bucks continued to have a disastrous season, even before the trade deadline, could he ask out? Could Giannis Antetokounmpo say, I don't want to be in Milwaukee anymore? It is very possible, and this could be the storyline going into the trade deadline, the storyline of next offseason. Giannis could leave. I mean, he's been saying some stuff the past couple of years that makes you ponder your eyes on whether he's 100% happy in Milwaukee. Yes, he signed a long-term extension when they got Damian Lillard because they made that trade, and I'm assuming Giannis put pressure on the front office to do something, but something just hasn't worked out. It just hasn't. So if I'm Giannis, I would request a trade right now. Right now. I mean, what else can I say? This has just been from the moment they hired Adrian Griffin, from the moment they traded Drew Holiday, it's just been a disaster. And the Bucks are just not going anywhere. And I mean, Doc Rivers, hot seat, it's going to start coming up. But at the end of the day, the coaching doesn't really matter. I mean, the defense is going to be really bad regardless. It's just the offense has been the concern. We know Milwaukee, of course, a high offensive scoring team, a team that gives up a lot of points. But the offense has been bottom 10. I think they're 21st in offensive efficiency at 111 points per game, which is not great. And, of course, they're third worst on defense. And that's just being bottom 10 in both. Obviously, it's not a great formula to win basketball games. Milwaukee has a serious problem. The offense lacks flow. I mean, Giannis and Dame haven't really gotten it going at all, to be quite honest, just to be really reasonable. They just haven't. So the questions are going to rise now. Could he ask out? And it doesn't get any easier for the Bucks. They play the undefeated Cavaliers twice, one at home, one on the road. Then they play Utah, which they should win, but you never know with that team. Then after that, you got at New York and Boston again. I mean, Milwaukee could start off the season 2-8, 6 games under 500 after 10 games. I mean, that is a problem. I mean, I know the Eastern Conference is not as strong as the West, and there is definitely room to go on a hot streak and get back in the conversation. But starting 6 games under 500 when you have 2 players with the caliber of Giannis and Dame, there's just something off with that Bucks team. And if I'm Giannis, I'm going to say I want out. And I mean, you could look at destinations where Giannis wants to go. Maybe in Miami, maybe in Brooklyn. Those are the two teams that Giannis has in the past expressed interest for, and there has been some reports about that. But why would you want to stay? Not even considering any other teams in this situation, just with Giannis in Milwaukee, not talking about where Giannis could go. Why would you want to stay? You're not going to win a title. This is the NBA. Superstars want to win championships. They will go to a place where they feel like, okay, I have a chance to win an NBA title. And I'm not saying Miami or Brooklyn gives Giannis that opportunity necessarily, especially with assets that a Miami would have to give up. And of course, Brooklyn's not great in the first place. But at the end of the day, you're not going to win in Milwaukee. You're not. And I know he's a loyal guy. He's a lifer. And he wants to stay with that team, and he wants to be loyal to that fan base because it's been a great experience in Milwaukee for Giannis. He was an underdog. He was the 15th pick in the 2013 draft, really built his way up to the point where he got MVP in 2019. The Bucks got the 1 seed, 2 games away from the finals. 2020 had a disappointing second-round loss. In 2021, came back strong and won. Giannis got that championship with the Bucks. But one championship doesn't define a superstar's legacy. Multiple championships, winning with different teams, winning at the highest level in different scenarios really helps a superstar's legacy. And that's just how the NBA works. Whether you like it or not, superstars don't come like the Dwayne Wades or the Dirk Nowitzkis anymore. They don't stay with the same team for 20 plus seasons. And Dwayne Wade didn't even stay with the Miami Heat for 20 years. What am I even talking about? He left for Chicago, and then Miami traded for him in his last 2 years from the Cavs. I mean, there's just not a lot of Dirk Nowitzki's, Kobe Bryant's, guys like that anymore who are going to stay loyal and be with the same team for 20 years because most superstars want to win, which is why they go to different teams when the situation they are in the present is just not working out. And it's now that time for Giannis. I mean, we couldn't have thought even last season when they had the disappointing first-round loss to the Pacers, okay, let's put a reset button on the Bucks. Doc Rivers, we know his history, great head coach. Let's give him a training camp. Let's see how it goes. Okay, we're seeing how it goes. They're 1-4 with 2 losses to awful teams. Something's got to happen, right? Something's got to budge. And what are they going to do? Fire Doc Rivers? Is that going to really help? You already fired 1 head coach. Are you going to really fire 2 head coaches in the span of less than a year? Is Milwaukee really going to do that? They committed a lot of money to Doc Rivers. He was sitting fine. He was on ESPN's A team for the NBA Finals, and then Milwaukee was like, here, take all this. Let's give you Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard. Here you go, win. Doc Rivers went into that pressure situation. And, of course, when there's a lot of pressure, there's not a lot of job security no matter what situation you're in. And Doc Rivers knows that. He wasn't going with this job saying, oh, I'm going to be here for 20 years. He knows that. He definitely knows that. So at the end of the day, this goes on the front office. And you look back at that Dame trade, giving up a guy like Jrue Holiday, someone who thrived with the Bucks, someone who really was the center and core of the defense. You look back and you say, man, what a loss. And not only a loss for them, an asset for your rivals and the Boston Celtics who won the NBA championship. So it was a double whammy for the Milwaukee Bucks. It wasn't just, oh, you lost him. It was, you lost him, and he went to our rivals who are contending in the Eastern Conference just like us. So to really evaluate how the season is going for the Bucks, you can't really put it into words. You can only say one thing. Something is brewing down there. And it's not a good brewing. It's a bad brewing. Something's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. I don't know what that is. But if the Bucks continue on this trajectory, something will happen. Someone will say something, whether that's Doc Rivers in a press conference, whether that's Giannis off the air, whether we hear a source about Giannis potentially wanting to get out of Milwaukee. Something's going to happen. I'm telling you that. Don't be surprised. And the Bucks are going to have a prove-it series, a home-and-home series with the Cavaliers. And if they don't win those, I mean, you're starting off the season 1-6. I mean, what can you say? What can you really say? I mean, Milwaukee, it's not even like the Bucks have been in close games. I mean, the Celtics won, they were close for in a little bit, but then it became a blowout. The Bulls and the Nets games, they weren't really close. They were controlled by Chicago and Brooklyn most of the time. This Memphis game, all 48 minutes controlled by the Grizzlies. And I don't really know if Chris Middleton's going to help because he's consistently coming off injuries. I mean, he's been up and down in the regular season. It's not like he's going to play a whole lot in the regular season anyway. So how much is Middleton really going to help? Probably not a lot. So there is tension rising in Milwaukee, and it is rising fast. And this will be a storyline that not only I will be looking for the rest of the season and leading up to the trade deadline, but the entire league right now is keeping their eyes open on the Milwaukee Bucks. It's happening. Chaos could be arising in the Deer City. So Milwaukee better figure some things out very, very fast. But I want to move on to the Orlando Magic as devastating news hit the Magic's territory last night as Paolo Banchero was diagnosed with a torn right oblique and will be sidelined indefinitely. He will be reevaluated in 4 to 6 weeks, and his return to play will be based on how he responds to the treatment. That is according to ESPN's Shams Charania. That is a brutal blow to the Orlando Magic. Because Paolo Banchero, in his third year, after being the number one pick in the 2022 NBA draft, has been nothing short but stellar. He has lived up to the hype. He has lived up to the potential. The Orlando Magic have been playing great basketball. And you can look at their record now and say, okay, they're 3-2. I'm a Heat fan. I think most of you know that if you have been long fans of the podcast. I watched that first game, Orlando against Miami. And I really thought that first game for both teams was like a setter. It was like, who's going to take the early lead in the division? Is Miami going to say, okay, this is still our division? Or is Orlando going to go into the Kaseya Center and say, no, this is our division right now. We are rising and we are taking over the Southeast Division. And that is exactly what the Magic did. They not only beat the Miami Heat, they smacked the Miami Heat on opening night, 116-97 with Banchero scoring 36. It was a new era with the Magic. Remember, I predicted them as the 3 seed. The Magic, I thought were going to have a stellar season, and Banchero was going to have not only an all-star caliber third year, almost getting himself in the MVP conversation. And that's what he did. In the fourth game that they played against the Indiana Pacers, he scored 50 points. 50 points in only his fourth game in the third year. Okay, yes, he was probably going to have a 50-point game this season, but not in the fourth game. Banchero was set to have a MVP caliber season. He was that good. He was making that much of an impact for the Magic organization. The Magic haven't really had a lot of success since that Dwight Howard era where they made the finals in 2009. This was finally the time, 15 years later, where the Magic were finally getting to that point where they were getting super close to championship contention. Like, you had the tier of the Celtics, Sixers, and Knicks. The Magic were right there, right below that tier. That was where the Orlando Magic were. And then they get this, where Banchero is probably going to be out for multiple months. Now, their roster is pretty solid. I mean, there's going to have to be guys like Franz Wagner, who is the second best player, 20 points per game on the Magic, and as well as guys off the bench like Jonathan Isaac, Franz's brother Mo Wagner, to really hold down the fort for Paolo Banchero. But you just can't really describe and replace the impact of what Banchero brings to that Orlando Magic team. I mean, he's just a big guy who can handle the ball with ease. He can attack the basket with ease. He can get to the free throw line with ease. He is one of the only big guys in the NBA who can handle the ball comfortably and score on all three levels without any problem. He just looked like he was going to be one of those dudes for the next decade. And he still will be. He still will be. But the way Orlando started the season, just looking so good against the Miami Heat, looking good against an Indiana Pacers team that made the conference finals last year. It was the expectations were very high and above the roof for an Orlando Magic team that has not had a lot of success in over 15 years. And this is just devastating. And it's going to be rough to hold down the fort. It's definitely going to be rough to maintain their level of success. I mean, right off the jump, they have Cleveland tonight. They go into Dallas and OKC and Indiana on a 3-game road stretch. I mean, those 4 games alone are difficult, and they could lose all 4 of those games without Paolo Banchero, and they are probably going to be underdogs in all 4 of those games without Paolo Banchero. And they could drop to 3-6 if they lose those 4 games. The good thing is, though, the Southeast Division is not that strong. I'm not saying division titles matter, but the Southeast Division is not that strong. So you have opportunities to climb back up in the standings with still 15 games left to go against your divisional opponents who are not that great. You also have the fact that teams like the Bucks, who we just mentioned, the Philadelphia 76ers, are not getting off to strong starts. There is room for error for the Magic. I mean, there is definitely time for recovery. But 2 months is a very long time. 2 months is, I mean, their next 20 games, their next 20, 25 games. And 20 to 25 games can define a season. Remember, the Eastern Conference last year, from the 4 seed to the 8 seed, separated by just 2 games. And Banchero's going to be out for 20 to 25. That's rough. That is rough. And the one thing that they're going to have to rely on is definitely their defense. Because their offense with Banchero looked great. But now you're taking away a 30-point per game scorer. So they're going to have to rely on what they do best, which is the defense. And Jalen Suggs, leading the helm on that department as the starting point guard, has been phenomenal for Orlando. Looking to have a breakout year, both on the defensive side and offensive end, but especially where he plays best, which is on defense, guarding the best guard of the game. You also have Anthony Black, who didn't really get a lot of opportunity last year for the Magic, obviously a rookie 5th pick from Arkansas. Now in this second year, he's had more of an opportunity to play in the rotation. And now he will not only have that, but probably without Banchero, he will be starting in the Orlando Magic's rotation under head coach Jamal Mosley, who is also doing an incredible job leading that young rising team. And Black has been shooting the ball well. And the 2 things that the Magic are going to have to rely on, especially without that interior presence with Paolo Banchero, is getting stops like they normally do as a top 5 defense in this league, and doing something that they didn't do great last year, which is shoot the 3 ball. And Anthony Black has been providing that along with Jalen Suggs in the 3-point shot. KCP hasn't really gotten off to the strongest of starts for the Magic, but we know what he can do, as we saw with the Denver Nuggets, Los Angeles Lakers prior to that, 40% from the 3-point line for KCP. We know what he can bring to the table, a huge acquisition for them this offseason. They're going to have to rely on that. That's the only way they can recover from this and try to hang in there, try to be around that 500 to a little bit under 500 realm. And you never know, they could be over 500, but I just don't see it because Banchero was just that good for them. He makes that big of a difference. I saw it game one this year against the Heat. He was the man who made a difference. And obviously every best player is going to make an impact. But the length, the amount of winning that he has brought to that organization is just unmatched. I mean, he has completely changed the trajectory of the Orlando Magic. A 180-degree spin. It's just gone the opposite way. I mean, I haven't seen any player. Not Victor Wembanyama hasn't even done it yet. That has just really just turned the organization around in a completely different direction in the last 3 or so drafts. The only player who's done it is Paolo Banchero. to be quite honest. Really. I mean, you could say maybe another guy, but you can't because Banchero has just been balling out, and it's tough. It's tough for Orlando, and we hope Banchero has a great recovery. We hope he comes back stronger than ever, continuing his all-star form. I don't know if he's going to get an all-star appearance now with the injury because missing 20 to 25 games before the all-star break is a little bit rough considering that you're pretty much voted on your first half season performance. So we'll see if he can get in the All-Star game when he comes back stronger and healthier than ever. But we are wishing Paolo Banchero a great recovery, and we hope he continues his amazing impact that he has brought and that Orlando Magic franchise. Another injury, though, that has happened in the NBA is the Golden State Warriors. But the Warriors have thrived off the Steph Curry injury. Steph Curry, of course, had an ankle sprain in the third game of the season, and he was reported to be out for a couple of weeks. And what did the Warriors do? Oh, they win 2 more games. The Warriors are starting off the season 4-1. Nobody thought that was going to happen. They beat the Pelicans twice. I mean, I wouldn't have expected that if I'm a Warriors fan. I was probably hoping for a split. And yes, they had 2 cupcakes. They had in their first 2 games the Blazers and the Jazz. But something has really stood out to me from this Golden State Warriors team. And it has been Buddy Hield. Because Buddy Hield has just been the perfect player for this Golden State Warriors system. He was like the perfect replacement for Klay Thompson. Not the Splash Brothers anymore, the Splash Buddies, if you know what I mean. But after being traded from Indiana to Philadelphia at the trade deadline last year, Buddy Hield didn't really get that much playing opportunity with the 76ers. Of course, the 76ers with Maxi Kelly Oubre, very guard heavy. Definitely very guard heavy, so did not get the opportunity he probably deserved with the 76ers. And he played a lot more with the Indiana Pacers than he did with the 76ers. So, of course, he decides to move on and goes to Golden State, where he has been starting and he has been thriving, averaging 21 points per game. I mean, it's a perfect fit. The perfect three-point offense for the perfect three-point player. Buddy Hield's responsibility is one thing and one thing only, and that is to shoot the three-point ball and hit it. And Buddy Hield has been doing that to perfection to start this season. 21.2 points per game, shooting it very efficiently like he does, and normally anyway. I mean, he's in the for 3-point percentage, he's in the 50s to start the season off. Like, he shot 71% in his first game, 77% in the second game. Had a rough shooting outing in their one loss against the Clippers, and then 63% and then 33%. I mean, Buddy Hield has been shooting the ball at an elite level, and this is something that I didn't even expect from the Warriors. I did think that Buddy Hield, DeAnthony Melton, and Kyle Anderson were great signings, and I thought the Warriors had a better offseason than people thought. But Buddy Hield being a 20-point-per-game scorer, that was not on my table. That card was not on my table. And this could change everything for the Golden State Warriors, because not only does that give the defense another shooter to guard now, especially with the loss of Klay Thompson, it opens up the floor for other guys. I mean, right now, Buddy Hield was outplaying Klay Thompson last year. It opens up the floor for guys to drive in. It opens up for guys like Andrew Wiggins, for guys like Jonathan Kuminga, for a driving guard like Moses Moody to attack the basket. And it's been working. Andrew Wiggins has had the best start of his season since 2022. Part of that may be his personal reasons, which I'm happy he is all done with. And Andrew Wiggins, of course, we know in 2022 was arguably the second best player on the Warriors championship team. And he's having a phenomenal start to the season. Moses Moody has had his best season so far, and I think his third year. I mean, Kuminga has gotten off to a little bit of a slow start, got benched, obviously. Hopefully he will get back to his form where he's putting up 15 and 8 per game. But we know the impact he can bring. But this Warriors team is thriving off Buddy Hield right now. And to really say that Buddy Hield is the best player on this team, it just perplexes me. But it's true. It's really true. And the Warriors are thriving off it. And they are scoring at an elite level right now. And if they continue they will be a threat in the Western Conference. Maybe not necessarily to win the Western Conference. I'm not going to get that far with the Golden State Warriors, especially with their aging team, losing Klay Thompson, and of course everything else that has happened with that organization, including Draymond Green's fanatics that we're not going to get into right now. They're not going to be a contender, but they're one of those teams that could potentially cause some chaos. Maybe an upset or two in the postseason. Maybe an upset in the regular season that can shift the standings. The Warriors will be a factor in deciding the Western Conference. And they're doing this without Steph Curry. Imagine when the four-time champion and future Hall of Famer gets back on the court. Imagine that offense, that 5 out with Buddy Hield and Steph Curry at the helm, with Andrew Wiggins playing the way he has, his best in 3 years. Something is brewing in Golden State. Something is definitely brewing. And Golden State has been reported that they are looking for some trade options as well. Of course, they were looking to Paul George in the offseason and Lauri Markkanen as well. That didn't happen. Maybe someone comes available at the trade deadline that they say, hey, maybe we'll throw in Jonathan Kuminga. Maybe we'll throw in another young asset. The Warriors are not necessarily rock bottom right now. There is still hope for Golden State. They only got a couple years left because Steph Curry, of course, is getting really up there. But the Warriors are not just a team that you can forget about because they will be a factor. And they could be looking to get someone at the trade deadline like a Jimmy Butler. I don't know. I'm just throwing a name out there. You never know what that Warriors front office, new general manager, second year, Mike Gentlevy Jr. can do. Because there is a lot of cards on the table, a lot of options for Golden State. And they will be a factor, and they are playing phenomenal basketball without Steph Curry, of course. And they will look to continue that as they play Houston tomorrow, and they play Washington on Monday. So they could start 6-1 right now before going to a interesting game against Boston. Of course, we know the whole dynamic with the Olympics. Steve Kerr versus Jason Tatum not getting enough playing time. Jaylen Brown not making the team in the first place. We know what that dynamic is going to be Wednesday, November 6th on ESPN. Definitely will be tuned into that one to see how Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown perform. But the Warriors are looking fantastic to start the season, and this is something that I did not expect early on. I want to move on, though, to a team that has not had a great start to the season, and that is the former 2023 NBA champions. The Denver Nuggets are 2-2 to start the season. Oh, they're 2-2, Josh. Why are you making such a big deal? It's not like they're 0-4. Well, let me tell you why. Their first 2 losses were to an Oklahoma City Thunder team at home that you were probably favored to beat. But okay, Oklahoma City's playing great right now. They're undefeated, and we'll get to them in a couple of minutes. Then you lose to the Clippers at home. A Clippers team, of course, that does not have Kawhi right now, lost Paul George, and just don't have a great roster. They lost to that Clippers team, who are also playing a little bit above expectations as well, but they did have a disappointing loss the other night against Portland. I probably was going to talk about them, about having a surprising start until they lost to Portland the other night. But they lost to the Clippers. Then they go on the road. Their 2 wins are against the Toronto Raptors in overtime, a game that they were down and trailing for most of the contest. And then the next night, the very same thing happens against another bad team in the Eastern Conference, and the Brooklyn Nets. Should have lost, trailing most of the game, beat Brooklyn barely in overtime by 5 points. This is concerning for the Denver Nuggets. It's not, okay, they're 500, let's give it a little bit of a break. A win's a win. No, a win is not a win. In the NBA, wins are not just wins. Everything is being evaluated. Just because you're 4-0 doesn't mean you're necessarily a great team. You could have had really bad performances, but the other team played worse. That's really possible. And it's not Nikola Jokic's fault. Let's start with that. Nikola Jokic, this is not you. This is to everyone else on that basketball team because Nikola Jokic is averaging 31.5 points per game, 12.5 rebounds per game, and 9 assists per game, absolutely dominating like he always does. Probably could be in the MVP conversation anymore, but people just don't want to talk about him being in the MVP conversation anymore because he's won MVP too many times. That's why he's not being talked about in the MVP conversation, because he's just won it too many times. He's won it 3 times in the past 5 years. 3 times in the past 4 years. That's how dominant Nikola Jokic has been, the NBA champion in 2023. This is not on him, but the rest of the roster, oh boy, has it been slow. Because Jamal Murray, someone who, of course, put his fingerprints on that Nuggets 2023 title run and their 2020 conference finals run in the bubble, been a phenomenal playoff performer. One of those guys, okay, decent regular season, not necessarily all-star caliber, and then all of a sudden in the postseason becomes, oh my God, he is an all-star and looking like a finals MVP candidate. That's the kind of player Jamal Murray is. He just elevates his game in the postseason, which we love to see as basketball fans. But to what point in the regular season just does it get a little bit concerning, especially when you're not getting wins, and when you win, it doesn't look good. Because Jamal Murray, he's been averaging 18 points per game, but just he hasn't been efficient. He hasn't shot the ball well. He's turned the ball over twice per game. Jamal Murray has just not looked to be the same player that he normally is. He shot 30% in 2 of their games so far. He's shot 40% in one of their games, and his best shooting game was 50% in a loss. I mean, Jamal Murray has just not played basketball that well to start the season off. And he didn't play well in the Olympics for Team Canada, which, of course, okay, it's Team Canada, it's the Olympics. He's coming off the bench. Give him a little bit of a break. But, I mean, did he show a sign of what was to come? Was he foreshadowing something? Because this has not been a great start for Jamal Murray. And there is a point, like I said, I get that you want to elevate your game, save everything for the postseason. But there's a point where your team needs you in the regular season, and you got to step up because you're not making the playoffs if you don't get enough quality wins in the regular season. You're not getting home court in the playoffs if you don't get 50-plus wins in the Western Conference in the regular season. Your performance in the regular season affects how you perform in the playoffs. I mean, it's pretty simple logic here. I'm not saying anything that's wrong. I mean, how many 8s? We've only seen 2 8 seeds make the NBA Finals. It's important to do well in the regular season. It pretty much tells us a lot about your team. And this has just not been good for Jamal Murray. And he has to step it up right now in the regular season because enough is enough. I have the same problem with Jimmy Butler, but I'm not going to talk about the Heat in this episode because, of course, the Miami Heat, they're 2-2, not so great, looking like the same team. I'm not going to talk about that. But he just reminds me so much of him. It's like, just squeeze out a little bit more in the regular season. Of course, Denver's clearly better than the Miami Heat, but you're just asking for a little bit more to just get maybe 2 to 3 wins more in the regular season, because that's what's going to matter when it determines who's going to get home court in the first round, who's going to get home court in the second round. Where are you in the standings? Are you playing a 4 seed or are you playing a 2 seed? Those 2 to 3 games matter where Jamal Murray could step up. And he had opportunities to do it, and he hasn't done it so far. And Jamal Murray is going to be a huge piece. I mean, Michael Porter Jr. as well hasn't gotten off to a strong start either, 13.3 points per game. Actually, Christian Braun has been pretty good with 14 points per game. But the main problem here with the Denver Nuggets is their bench is not great. Their bench is just not good. I mean, you look at their bench, Russell Westbrook, Julian Strawther, Peyton Watson, and Dario Saric. If they are only giving Denver, 22 points per game? That's not great, people. They're only scoring 15% of the points. Denver is relying on their starters to score 85 to 90% of the points. That does not sound like a winning formula to me. And part of the problem is paying Michael Porter Jr. a lot of money, paying Aaron Gordon a lot of money, paying Jamal Murray even a lot of money, because you get to the point where you're a second apron team and you can't retain your players. 4 key players from the 23 championship team, Bruce Brown, Jeff Green, Contavious Caldwell-Pope and Reggie Jackson are all gone. They're all on different teams now. Denver is not the same team they were. Christian Braun was a luxury 10th man. Now he's forced to be a starter because Denver just doesn't have depth. And they're relying on Russell Westbrook, someone who hasn't been great the past couple of years. And he's gotten older. He's not the player he was before. He could make a great impact, but eventually, but he just hasn't showed it so far. He's looked like the same player he has been ever since he got traded from the Washington Wizards. I mean, you can't really rely on young guys like Julian Strawther and Peyton Watson as a contending team and expect to win. You've got to manage your money better. And maybe to gain more depth, it may require to trade a starter. It may require you to trade Michael Porter Jr. Maybe get 2 to 3 guys that can come off your bench and make an impact. That may have to be the case because I don't really have any answers for Denver because there's nothing I can really say that they can fix other than the bench. I mean, the only thing is Jamal Murray stepping up. I mean, their starters have been fine. They've been scoring 90% of the points, but the starters can't play the whole game. That's just how it works, especially in the regular season. The starters cannot play 40 to 44 minutes in the regular season. That's just not how it works. The bench is going to have to contribute, and they have not. Something has to happen. Something has to budge for Denver. So I would look out for the Nuggets before the trade deadline to explore their options. I don't think they're going to make a trade because that's how I think the Denver Nuggets front office is thinking, Calvin Booth and their front office over there. But exploring options. Hey, could we get a decent starter and maybe 2 guys we can bring off the bench in exchange for Michael Porter Jr.'s contract? Just looking at that possibility. Do I think they should do it? Absolutely. Are they going to do it? Probably not. But Denver needs some help on the bench. And that's the only way you can get it. You are stuck in the second apron. You can't sign players off waiver wire. You can't really have a lot of flexibility to your roster unless you give up a big salary. And the only big salaries you have are your starters. And you're not trading Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. You're not trading Aaron Gordon, your third best player. I mean, it comes down to trading Michael Porter Jr. right now. And I don't know if they're going to do it. But something's going to happen fast because Denver's only getting older. I mean, it's just another year of not winning the title. They won it in 2023, but that's great. You moved on. You lost in 2024 after you blew a 20-point lead in a Game 7 at home. A disappointing loss, to say the least. You got to move on. If you're satisfied with one championship and you want to be this middle-of-the-pack playoff team, sure. But if you want to continue taking advantage of Nikola Jokic's prime, you're going to have to do something eventually if you're Calvin Booth, because this cannot last. I mean, I predicted Denver as the 5th seed for these reasons. Yes, they may win some more games. They may do better than 2-2. They could be 46 and 36. I don't know the exact record they're going to have, but around that area, and they could be a 5 seed and lose in the first round, maybe getting upset and then losing the second round, but they're not going anywhere. They're not making the finals. They're not even making the conference finals the way they're playing right now. Something has to change for Denver. And I think Mike Malone's a great head coach. I don't think it's on him. I think it's upstairs in the front office. And there will be a trade that has to happen if Denver wants to contend. I want to go on to our last segment of the show, a quick little segment to shout out the 2 undefeated teams left in the NBA. Of course, the Boston Celtics were the 3rd undefeated team, but they did lose to the Indiana Pacers in a classic game Wednesday night in overtime. I think 109 to 106, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know the exact score. Don't kill me for getting that wrong. But the 2 undefeated teams left are the Oklahoma City Thunder at 4-0 and the Cleveland Cavaliers at 5-0. So I want to touch on both of those teams pretty quickly. The Oklahoma City Thunder have just been dominant to start the season. They have won every single game by double digits. And I predicted the Thunder to be the 1st seed because they are that good. And it's not even their offense that's surprising me. Of course, Chet Holmgren having an incredible second technically officially second season after being injured in his rookie season 2 years ago, getting his official rookie season last year, now his second year. He has been great. He looks like an all-star. Jalen Williams still doing his thing, almost playing all-star caliber like. The offense, it's been pretty much the same as last year, but it's been the defense that has impressed me with this team. We know and we knew what their offensive capability was, of course, with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the other two I mentioned. But you get a guy like Alex Caruso. When you see internal guys like Cason Wallace, Chet Holmgren developing on the defensive side as well, it's been a beautiful thing to see. And if the Thunder, the way they played offense last year, elevate their defense, they are going to be major threats to the Boston Celtics title hopes. They will be a problem. They are a problem in the West, but I'm not just saying the West right now. A problem to win the NBA championship. And what's also just so beautiful about this team is the chemistry they have. I mean, you look at the barks that they do at the end of the games, right? Whenever they win with the post-game reporter, you think it's funny, right? But have you ever seen a team come together, supporting one player in an interview after a win, just having fun together, laughing? I mean, the team chemistry couldn't be better. I mean, this team just has camaraderie with each other. They like to play with each other. They like to be around each other. And that is the perfect environment. It's a young team. They've got a lot of great players. They brought in two great veterans in Alex Caruso and Isaiah Hartenstein. And Hartenstein we haven't even seen play yet with this team because of his injury. Hopefully he gets better soon. I mean, the future is bright for the Thunder. The future is definitely bright. And I might regret my Minnesota Timberwolves pick to make the finals. I didn't want to say the Thunder to make the finals because everyone was taking the Thunder to make the finals. But you know what? Sometimes everybody's right. Because this team has looked sensational. And again, I'll say one more time. The way their offense is played, if that defense elevates, oh boy, they could win the NBA title. Because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, my MVP pick, looks like the number one, has played like an MVP so far. If Chet Holmgren can elevate himself to all-star status in year 2, and Jalen Williams following suit, when you have 3 all-star caliber players with a great supporting, young, rising cast, you better watch out because the Thunder are coming. The other team that is undefeated, the best record in the NBA, nobody, I'm sorry, would have expected this. The Cleveland Cavaliers, under new head coach Kenny Atkinson, are 5-0. Okay, maybe having cupcake opponents such as the Raptors, the Wizards, and the Pistons helps a little bit to get to 3-0. Maybe just a little bit. But I wouldn't be talking about the Cavs if I didn't see the way they went in to Madison Square Garden, a place that they've had trouble winning at, and beat the Knicks the way they did, beating them at their own game, out-hustling, out-performing, and out-mentally toughing a Tom Thibodeau-led New York Knicks team, who, by the way, was probably coming in as the most hyped team in the league, getting Karl Anthony Towns, Mikal Bridges in the offseason. They just went to the Garden and beat them. Darius Garland, 36 points to lead the Cavaliers in that game. And what has been the answer for Kenny Atkinson going into this season as the first-year head coach? The answer that he had to solve was, how do I get Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell to thrive on the court together, and at the same time, get Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen to thrive on the court together? But Evan Mobley, first, I'll answer the big man question first, because Evan Mobley has really expanded his game. He has not been a post player anymore. He has gotten outside. He has handled the ball at points. He has been not necessarily blocking Jared Allen's presence in the paint. Mobley's getting out there, shooting threes. Mobley's playing more of like that point center role that Cleveland probably wanted to see him play. And he's been doing that, and he's been doing that to perfection in the first 5 games. And that's opened up Jared Allen in the post. That's given him more opportunities. And Evan Mobley has really been a versatile player on defense as well, which gives Jared Allen the opportunity to guard the big guy who likes to hang around the paint. This has been the biggest problem was definitely the big man. Okay, the guards were one thing, but Kenny Atkinson has found something in making Mobley and Allen on the court together a viable situation. And then the guards. Garland and Garland and Mitchell are just going off one another now. It just changed from last year. I can see a difference off the first 5 games. 100%. You got to give a lot of props to Kenny Atkinson because I didn't think J.B. Bickerstaff should have been fired. Maybe Donovan Mitchell thought something that, of course, a typical NBA media nerd like me wouldn't have thought of. Maybe Kenny Atkinson had the answer, or maybe Donovan Mitchell had the answer and asked Kenny Atkinson to implore this into the Cavaliers' offensive system. Because their defense has always been great. The defense hasn't been the problem for the Cavaliers. They've been a top 5 defense since they acquired Donovan Mitchell, even before that, through and through. But they are finding ways now on offense to thrive with the 2-point guard, 2 big man system. And they haven't even seen Max Strus play yet because Max Strus is out for the first 6 weeks of the season. They've started Dean Wade, and he's thriving. Give a lot of props to Kenny Atkinson and his coaching staff with the Cavaliers. And we will see if they continue their success, as they do have a interesting schedule as they go on to play, I think, Orlando tonight on ESPN. And then tomorrow on a back-to-back, they play Milwaukee, and then they play Milwaukee again. Then they play the Pelicans and then the Warriors. So definitely a much harder schedule than the Cavs had in their first 5 games. But if they can win more, if they can start off their first 10 games 9-1, that's definitely a win. You can't be complaining if you're a Cavaliers fan. But once again, props to Kenny Atkinson for figuring out how to run the offense with the 2 guards and the 2 bigs at the same time. And that is it for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. We are officially into the NBA season, almost 2 weeks done with the NBA season already. How fast has it gone? This has been an exciting, surprising, storyline, thriving start to the 24-25 NBA season. Remember, please subscribe on the YouTube channel. Click that like button. Leave a comment. Give me your takes on whatever I said in today's episode. That is all my shots for the day. Remember, follow me on Instagram, any social media platform, and I will see you next Friday as we continue reacting to what is happening early in this NBA season. I will see you next time. Hope everyone had a happy holiday and enjoy your weekend.